Have you ever stared at a massive to-do list for a project and just felt stuck? Not because the tasks are hard, but because you have no idea where to even start? It's a super common problem. But what if you could take that chaos and turn it into a clear, logical, and efficient workflow? Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle today. We're going to break down how to sequence activities like a top-tier consultant, turning that messy list into a powerful blueprint for success.
Here's our game plan. We've got 6 steps. First, we'll cover the why behind all this. Then, we'll look at the inputs you absolutely need to get started. After that, we'll dive into the language of logic with PDM relationships and decode the different types of project dependencies. We'll fine-tune things with leads and lags, and then finally, we'll pull it all together into the project network diagram. So, let's get into it.
All right, first things first. Before we jump into the how, any good consultant starts with why. Why are we even doing this? I mean, why is sequencing activities so important? This isn't just about making a prettier list, it's about embedding a strategic advantage right into the core of your project.
I mean, just look at this. It's so obvious when you see it laid out. Think about building a house. The list on the left is just a pile of tasks. The workflow on the right? That's a strategy. You know you can't build walls before you pour the foundation, right? You can't run electrical wiring through walls that don't even exist yet. A logical workflow respects these realities. This is the big leap from just knowing what you have to do to mastering how and when to do it.
And here is the official definition from the PMBOK guide, which is basically the Bible for project managers. I want you to focus on that last part for the greatest efficiency. See, this isn't just about putting things in order. It's about finding the best order to save time, to cut down on risk, and to make sure you're using your people and resources in the smartest way possible.
Okay, so where do we start? Well, you can't build a house without materials, and you can't build a project schedule without your inputs. We have to gather all the foundational documents and plans before we can even think about connecting the dots.
These are the non-negotiables. Your schedule management plan, that sets the rules for how you're going to do this. The scope baseline tells you exactly what you're building. Then you've got your key documents. The activity list is your what, and the activity attributes add critical detail like who's doing it and how. The assumption log is crucial. It flags things you're taking for granted. And the milestone list gives you your big targets. Trying to sequence without these, it's just pure guesswork.
All right, now we're getting to the heart of it. We're going to talk about the core technique, which is the precedence diagramming method, or PDM. The easiest way to think about this is as the grammar for your project schedule. It gives us the language and the rules to connect all our activities together in a way that actually makes sense.
These 4 relationships are the only tools you need. They're the building blocks for your entire schedule. Finish to start is the most common by far. You finish A, then you start B. Simple. Start to start lets you run things in parallel. Finish to finish is for when 2 things need to end at the same time. And that last one, start to finish, it's really rare, but when you need it, you really need it. Let's make this real with some examples. Finish to start is your workhorse. You'll use it for like 95% of your activities. The others are more specialized, but check out that start to finish example. The new system has to be up and running before you can finish shutting down the old one. It's a lifesaver for avoiding downtime in a critical system switchover. Okay, so we know how to connect our activities. Now we need to understand the nature of those connections. We need to categorize our dependencies. Think of these as the underlying rules of the road that are forcing our hand in the sequence we choose. It really boils down to this. Is it a must-do or a should-do? Mandatory dependencies, what we call hard logic, are non-negotiable. They're the laws of physics, or the actual law. You just can't test a car before you build the engine. Discretionary dependencies, or soft logic, are different. They're about preference or best practices. You know, your team might decide it's better to paint all the rooms before installing carpet. Could you do it the other way? Sure, but it's probably not a good idea. And the other way we slice this is by control. Is the dependency internal, something your team can manage? Or is it external, something you're just stuck waiting for? An internal one is like your dev team needing to finish coding before the QA team can start testing. An external one is when you're waiting on a government permit or a key piece of hardware from a supplier. You can't control when it shows up. Okay, this right here is a huge pro tip. You absolutely must document why you made the choices you did for your discretionary or soft logic dependencies. Why? Because those choices can eat up your schedule flexibility, your float, and if you need to crash the schedule later, they can box you in. Writing down the why protects you and lets everyone know it was a deliberate choice, not an oversight. Now, when you put these 2 concepts together, mandatory versus discretionary and internal versus external, you get this really powerful diagnostic tool. This matrix gives you 4 distinct buckets for any dependency,
and you can see right away where your biggest risks are. That mandatory external box, that's a huge red flag. It's something you have to wait for, and it's completely out of your control. This framework helps you spot those risks a mile away.
All right, now it's time for some fine-tuning. We've got our activities linked, we understand the dependencies. Now we're going to use leads and lags to add some real precision to the timing between our tasks.
A lead is just a fancy word for a head start. It lets you overlap activities to compress your schedule, which is a technique called fast tracking. For example, maybe you start writing the user manual a week before the software coding is totally finished. You're giving the next task a lead, and in doing so, you're pulling in your finish date.
A lag is the opposite. It's a mandatory waiting period. Now, this isn't just dead time. It's a required delay that's part of the work itself. Think about waiting for paint to dry before you can hang pictures, or for concrete to cure before you build on top of it. That wait time is the lag, and putting it in your schedule is what makes your plan realistic.
And finally, we get to the payoff. All this work, defining tasks, sequencing them, classifying the dependencies, and fine-tuning the timing, it all comes together in one incredibly powerful document, the Project Network Diagram. This is your master blueprint.
Seriously, don't think of this as just a flowchart. It's so much more than that. This diagram is the visual proof of all your strategic thinking. It shows every task, every connection, and every dependency. It turns that simple list into a dynamic model of your project's workflow. This is the tool that lets you find your critical path, manage your resources, and predict your finish date with real confidence.
Now, when you're looking at your diagram, there are two things you need to hunt for: divergence and convergence. Path divergence is when one activity kicks off a whole bunch of parallel tasks. That can be a huge strain on your resources. Path convergence is the opposite. It's where multiple streams of work have to finish before one critical task can start. Those convergence points, they are classic bottlenecks and a huge source of risk. That's where you need to focus your attention.
This quote from the PMBOK guide highlights the golden rule of quality control for your diagram. You can't have any dangling activities. Every single task has to flow from something and into something else. If you've got a task just floating out there by itself, it means your logic is broken and your whole schedule is built on a shaky foundation.
And remember, the diagram isn't the only thing you produce. The process of building it is so rigorous that it forces you to sharpen your thinking about everything. So you'll also end up with updates to all your key documents. Your activity attributes will be clearer, your assumption log more detailed, and your milestone list more realistic. It brings everything into alignment.
So here's the real takeaway. When you move from a simple task list to a full-blown network diagram, you fundamentally change your job. You're not just a task tracker anymore. You're a project strategist. You can actually see the critical path, you can spot bottlenecks before they happen, and you can make smart, proactive decisions. You haven't just built a schedule, you've built a blueprint for success. And that gives you the power to lead your project with total clarity and confidence.